They didn't see his experience. They didn't see his qualifications. The moment he walked into that room, something shifted, eyes met, then quickly looked away, followed by smirks he couldn't ignore. To them, he was already out of place. Every second stretched longer than it should have. Every glance carrying a judgment no one dared to say out loud. He knew this feeling. It wasn't new. But what they didn't know was how wrong they were about to be. Because the same man they laughed at in that moment would soon become the one they answered to. He had built everything the hard way. Years of studying late into the night, working jobs no one else wanted, and pushing through doors that rarely opened for people like him. By the time he walked into that company, his resume spoke louder than most, but somehow it never felt like enough. Not in rooms like that. Every interview he had ever faced carried the same unspoken weight. The extra scrutiny, the subtle doubt, the quiet assumptions that followed him before he even had the chance to speak. Still, he showed up prepared, composed, and focused because he had learned early on that he couldn't afford to be anything less than perfect. That morning felt no different. The building stood tall, polished, and intimidating. Inside, everything looked like opportunity, but also like a place where he didn't quite belong. As he stepped through those doors, he could already feel the shift. The glances, the silence lingered just a little too long. It wasn't obvious to everyone, but he noticed. He always did. And as he took his seat, waiting for his turn, something in the air felt off, like a decision about him had already been made before the interview even began. The moment his name was called, the room seemed to tighten around him. He stepped in with quiet confidence, shoulders steady, mind focused, but the energy shifted almost instantly. It wasn't just the questions. It was the tone behind them. Cold, detached, as if they weren't trying to understand him, but trying to confirm something they had already decided. Every answer he gave was precise, backed by years of experience. Still, their reactions felt off. A raised eyebrow here. A glance was exchanged there. One of them leaned back, arms crossed, studying him with a look that felt less like curiosity and more like disbelief. Another tapped their pen impatiently, as if waiting for him to slip. That happened. A question that didn't belong. Subtle on the surface, but loaded underneath. It wasn't about his skills. It wasn't about the role. It was about whether he could fit into their environment. The word lingered in the air, heavy and unspoken in its true meaning. He had heard it before, many times. He answered anyway, calm, controlled, professional. But inside, something shifted. The interview moved on, but the respect never came. Their attention drifted. One of them smirked when he spoke about his achievements, as if they were exaggerated or undeserved. Another cut him off mid-sentence, redirecting the conversation like his voice didn't carry weight in that room. And then, the moment that stayed with him. A chuckle, barely hidden, followed by a look that spread across the table, subtle but shared. It didn't need words. He understood it perfectly. They didn't take him seriously. The air grew heavier with every passing second. He could feel it pressing against him, testing his composure. Every instinct told him what this really was, not just a difficult interview, but a silent judgment unfolding in real time. A decision shaped by something deeper than qualifications. Still, he didn't break. He finished strong, delivered every answer with clarity, held his ground, even as the room seemed determined to shrink his presence. And when it was over, he stood, thanked them, and walked out with the same quiet dignity he walked in with. But the moment those doors closed behind him, everything hit at once. The frustration, the anger, the familiar sting of being underestimated. Not for the first time, and likely not the last. He had done everything right, and yet it still felt like it wasn't enough. Outside, the world moved on as if nothing had happened. People passed by. Cars rushed through the streets. Life continued, unaware of the weight he carried in that moment. He paused for just a second, then kept walking, because deep down, he knew something they didn't. This wasn't the end of his story. It wasn't even the moment that would define it. And somewhere ahead, beyond that rejection, beyond that quiet humiliation, was a future they never saw coming. A future where the roles would be reversed in a way none of them could have imagined. Months passed. Silence followed that interview. No call, no email, nothing. Just another closed door in a long line of them. But this time, something inside him refused to settle. He didn't let that moment define him. Instead, he built something of his own. Long nights turned into early mornings. Risks replaced comfort. And slowly, what started as an idea began to grow. Stronger, bigger, undeniable. His work spoke for itself, louder than any room that had ever doubted him. Recognition followed, then success, then influence, and then, one day, everything came full circle. He walked into a building that felt familiar, but this time, it wasn't as a candidate. It was as the one in charge. The same company, the same polished floors, the same kind of room where decisions were made. Only now the power had shifted. His name carried weight here. His presence commanded attention. And across the table sat the same faces. The confidence they once had was gone, replaced with something else. Unease, hesitation. The very people who had questioned his worth were now waiting for his approval. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Every memory came rushing back. The smirks, the doubt, the quiet laughter that echoed louder than words. The moment they had reduced him to something smaller than he was. Now, the roles were reversed. They spoke, but their voices didn't carry the same certainty. Their words felt careful, measured, controlled in a way they had never been before. And for the first time, they understood what it felt like to be on the other side of judgment. He looked at them, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with something far more powerful. Clarity. Because in that moment, he realized this wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about deciding what kind of man he would be now that he had the power they once used against him. He didn't rush his decision. The room waited, heavy with anticipation, but he took a moment, just enough to remind himself of everything it had taken to get here. The struggle, the doubt, the countless times he had been overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed without reason. He could have let that moment turn into something else, something colder, something driven by the same bias he had once faced. But he didn't, because this was never just about revenge. It was about change. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with the same tone they had once used on him. There was no quiet dismissal, no hidden judgment, just clarity, fairness, and control. The kind of leadership that didn't rely on assumptions, but on truth. And in that moment, the power in the room didn't come from authority alone. It came from a way he chose to use it. The decision he made that day didn't just affect a company. It set a standard. A reminder that success isn't about proving others wrong, but about refusing to become what tried to break you. And for those sitting across from him, it was something they wouldn't forget. Not because they were rejected or accepted, but because, for the first time, they were forced to confront a reality they had once ignored. He walked out of that room different but not hardened, stronger, but still grounded in something deeper than success. Because what happened to him wasn't rare. It wasn't unique. It was a pattern that plays out every day in rooms just like that one, in ways both obvious and invisible. And that's the part that lingers. How many others have walked into opportunities already decided for them? How many voices have been dismissed before they were even heard? How many futures quietly redirected, not by lack of talent, but by silent bias? His story didn't end in that room. It became a reflection of something bigger. Because the real question isn't whether he proved them wrong. It's how many more people have to go through the same thing before no one has to prove themselves twice just to be seen once. They laughed at him in the interview, dismissed him without a second thought, but what happened next turned the tables in a way no one saw coming. This story isn't just about one man's journey. It's about silent bias, overlooked potential, and the moments that define who we become when the world underestimates us. Watch until the end to see how everything came full circle. If this story made you feel something, don't stay silent. Like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful stories that need to be heard.